Welcome to the Mid-Ohio Valley Public Forum video podcast. This podcast features issues of interest to the Mid-Ohio Valley area. The coronavirus pandemic has changed civic life greatly throughout our country.
This is an election year, and one of the big changes is that candidates can't campaign for office the way they normally would. There aren't any events where they can go and greet and meet the voters in person. So that's not possible this year.
So many of our initial podcasts will be interviews with candidates for local and state office. If you're a candidate and you're interested in being interviewed, you can reach out to us through our Facebook page at the MOV Public Forum or via email. That's movpublicforum@gmail.com.
Today we'll be interviewing Stephen Smith. Stephen is a candidate for governor of West Virginia. Stephen, welcome. We're glad you could take the time to join us this afternoon.
No, thank you for this opportunity. I'm glad to be here.
Well, with that, let's dive right in. Give us your best 1-minute introduction pitch speech.
I think the biggest thing that's different about our campaign is that we don't think that one governor is the solution to all of our problems. We're the only campaign that doesn't take corporate PAC money, the only campaign that's visited your county, no matter what your county is, at least twice, holding 197 town halls. And you can see where we stand on all of the issues. An education plan written by educators, a veterans plan written by veterans, and a real shift of wealth and power away from out-of-state corporations back to the people of West Virginia. If you find the people who are working the hardest and bearing the greatest burdens, that's whose side we're on. We're not for sale, and we're not doing it alone. I'm one of 94 candidates who are running all across the state, and every one of us has promised never to cross a picket line, never hide from a debate, and never take corporate PAC money. We want a government of, by, and for the people.
So, Stephen, all candidates are different. What education, knowledge, skills do you have that you feel sets you apart from the other candidates running for governor?
Excellent question. I was originally born in Charleston, West Virginia. My family moved back when I was a kid. I think some of the things that I bring to the table uniquely are that I've spent my entire career, the last 20 years, in public service, ever since I was a student on campus, organizing and getting arrested alongside cooks and security guards and janitors fighting for a living wage. My entire career has been in public service, whether that was working in Chicago alongside young people of all different race and class backgrounds, or moving back home to West Virginia to run a statewide anti-poverty organization. I've never run for office before, but arguably I have as much or more political experience as any of the other candidates for governor. That's because for the last 8 years, I ran an organization and got to work alongside people from all different walks of life. And we helped pass 27 pieces of legislation in the state capitol. And every single one of those had at least some bipartisan support. In addition, again, I've never run before, but I've had the experience of training more than 200 other people to run for office, the kinds of folks who are often underrepresented in government. Women, people of color, working class people. So I bring to this a set of experiences in politics, but not on the inside or at the top looking down, but politics from the bottom up.
So what's your main motivation that made you decide to step up and run for office now?
Anger. I wake up every day and I'm angry about the government and the state and the nation and the world that we're leaving to our kids. I was just on a walk with my 8-year-old son, and he knows that there's a food shortage. He knows about climate change. He is far more connected to issues like mass incarceration and substance use disorder than I was at 8 years old, or that any child should be at 8 years old, because of the way that grown-ups are failing. That what we're trying to do in this campaign is fundamentally change things. And I know that that can feel impossible, but we think it's necessary. And just like in 1932, at the height of the Great Depression, the New Deal seemed impossible. Just like the teachers and school service personnel who went on strike 2 years ago were told that a 5% raise was impossible. We have to be willing to try to do impossible things, or else we're just going to keep in the same cycle over and over again. And doing that, allowing that to happen, is far worse.
So Stephen, you may have touched on this already, but what do you think is your wow factor? What is it, that factor that's going to make someone say, wow, I'm going to vote for that guy?
I feel like that's a question somebody else should answer. But the thing I'm most proud of is how much time and effort our campaign spends into building other leaders, that we really do believe that one governor isn't the answer. And so we've spent months of time and endless trainings and money and resources in recruiting and training and supporting these down ballot candidates. We spent the entire first year of the campaign building 55 volunteer teams across the state in every county, 39 volunteer teams, veterans organizing veterans, seniors organizing seniors, students organizing students. And none of those 94 volunteer teams has anybody's name on it, right? It's not Wood County for Smith or Veterans for Johnson. It's Wood County can't wait, Veterans can't wait. We're building something from the beginning that truly isn't about one person, because we truly believe that one person isn't the answer. But the people of West Virginia are the answer. That in crisis after crisis, what we see is not a single politician riding in to save the day. What we see are our neighbors working on the front lines, organizing food distribution, making masks, and pitching in. And it's that spirit that's fueling our campaign. And it's that spirit that is what we want in government. And that is totally unique. Just to brag for a second on our volunteers, right now, as we're having this conversation, there are 377 neighborhood captains based all around the state. We recruited and trained these people in just the last 2 months, but of course we spent the whole year and a half bringing them into our movement. Each one of those neighborhood captains is checking in on 100 of their neighbors on a weekly basis to make sure they have food and medicine and information. That our volunteers got together with our staff and our candidates when this pandemic hit, and they said, you know what? We now have two responsibilities. We have to do everything we can to win this election and win a people's government. And we also have a responsibility to try to limit the suffering of our neighbors. And so they turned a field operation into, for a campaign, into something that's also a COVID response team. What that tells me, one, that we're doing something different, and two, that the people of West Virginia are perfectly capable of governing if we give ourselves the chance.
So if you're elected, tell us the one thing you really want to accomplish during your term in office.
I hate this question because we need so many things. So I'm going to answer the question because the only thing worse is politicians who don't answer questions. But I hope we come back to some of the other issues. If I were given the opportunity to do just one thing on day one, something that we can do even without the legislature, and this is important because we may not have a legislature that wants to work with us, but there's a lot that can change in the executive branch of government. One of those things is our state police. We talked to law enforcement officers at the state police and the local level, and we built a law enforcement plan that would create a corporate crime and political corruption division in the state, partnering with the state police. Why is that so important? Right now in West Virginia, we have corrupt politicians and corporate criminals and white-collar criminals running rampant. They're everywhere. When we asked West Virginians one-on-one, face-to-face, we asked 11,000 West Virginians, what's your number one issue? What do you care about? What would you change? The number one issue, more than roads, schools, jobs, the number one issue was corruption. And the reason why all of that's happening is because we have no one minding the cookie jar. And that is something we can change just with executive power, because the laws are on the books. We just need to empower our law enforcement officers who want that opportunity to go after the real bad guys. We got to give them the opportunity to do that. And when we do that, we're going to start to have a more equal society, one where it's not quite so easy for those out-of-state corporate interests and corrupt politicians to keep stealing from us.
I'm over 6 decades old, and I think every gubernatorial candidate in West Virginia in my lifetime has promised to bring more jobs to the state. And yet we keep losing people and losing jobs. What can you do to turn that around that no one else has been able to do?
Well, I can't do it by myself, but let me talk a little bit about why this pattern happens. So you're right. Every governor comes up and says, I'm going to promise more jobs. And then all of them end up doing the exact same thing. And here's the problem. The promising more jobs isn't the problem. The problem is how they try to go about doing it. What they do, and this is the story as old as West Virginia, they say, we're going to take the wealth of the people of West Virginia. We're going to bundle it up in the form of tax breaks and tax giveaways. And we're going to send the wealth of the people of West Virginia away from West Virginia. And maybe at the end of it, jobs will magically come back. That has never worked. And it's obvious why it doesn't work. If you give the wealth of your people in your state away from your state does not get wealthier, right? It is a lie told to us by the people who personally profit off of that strategy. There is another strategy, though, one that is actually quite simple, one that has worked before in West Virginia and in the United States, one that is waiting for us if we're willing to be bold, if we're willing to do the common sense thing. That is that when you take that money back, that's our money, that tax money, taxpayer money, when you take it back from those tax dodgers and you invest it into infrastructure, real jobs program, like a New Deal era jobs program, which you can learn more about on our website, and entrepreneurship and small businesses, that's the real opportunity. Small businesses, local entrepreneurs create jobs at a much faster rate, better jobs than out-of-state corporations. Out-of-state corporations, if you're on the New York Stock Exchange, you are literally responsible to your stakeholders, not to the people of West Virginia. And if that means cutting jobs, if that means cutting wages to get more profits to your stakeholders and shareholders, you have to do that. You're legally obligated to hurt the people of West Virginia and help your shareholders in Denver or Dubai or wherever. Instead, if we invest that same wealth into the local economy, farmers, entrepreneurs, etc., then we not only keep more of our wealth here, we not only create more jobs. The real opportunity is we make West Virginia the best place in the country to start a small business. And when we do that, that's a competitive advantage. Look, we're never going to be beating Pittsburgh and Denver at their own game, but we can be the best place in the country for small towns and small farmers and small businesses. But we have to do it. We have to actually do the work of ending that flow of capital and tax breaks to the people who are undercutting our farmers and small businesses.
This question's for my brother. Access to high-speed, reliable internet is holding the state back from becoming what it needs to be. What is your plan for getting affordable, reliable, high-speed broadband internet access to every corner of our state?
Thank you so much for this question. I love this question because there is a real answer, even though you aren't hearing it from most politicians. Most politicians, when they talk about broadband, listen for this. What they say is, I believe in broadband access, or they say, we need to invest in broadband access. It's one of these things politicians do where they just repeat the problem back to you and pretend like they gave you a solution. Instead, we went to local mayors and county commissions. We went to local internet providers. We looked at examples around the country, and we found that the problem with broadband in West Virginia isn't because we're rural, right? That's the first lie that they tell. They say, well, we can't have good broadband because we're a rural state. That's a lie. Some of the strongest broadband networks in the country are in rural areas. The problem we have is not a rural problem, it's a monopoly problem. That we have a small number of providers and they are incentivized, essentially, to charge as much as possible for as bad as possible service, right? The worst possible service at the highest possible price. The only way to fix it is to actually challenge those monopolies. And what we've seen from politicians is that not only are they not challenging those monopolies, they often work for those monopolies. In fact, our Senate president is a former executive of one of those broadband monopolies. How do you do that? One, you have to make broadband a public utility governed by the Public Service Commission so that the standards of that industry are accountable to the citizens and the ratepayers, just like with other utilities. Number two, you have to install this corporate crime and political corruption division so that we go after the bad actors and we go after the monopolies that are getting rich off of us. Three, we have to build a broadband middle mile. This is absolutely essential because right now what happens is the middle mile in West Virginia is owned in private hands, meaning that if you're just a startup internet company trying to get into the game, you actually have to go through your competitor for the opportunity to compete. And that's why we don't see any competition. And competition is what will drive the prices down and the service up. You can see all of this online at wvcan'twait.com. Every one of our policy plans is written in black and white in detail, and we tell you how we pay for it. And that doesn't mean it's going to be easy to achieve these things. We still have to fight for it, but we have a vision of what's possible if we're willing to kick the good old boy club out of government.
Everyone knows West Virginia's been steadily declining in population for decades now. Our best and our brightest get educated here and move out of state, and people are not coming here from elsewhere. So I know we've talked about jobs and broadband, but what else do you hope to do to get people to come to West Virginia?
It's the same thing we were talking about before, that when you send the wealth and resources of your state away, you can't be surprised when the people leave too. This is actually a very simple problem, not a complex policy solution. It's not a complex policy problem. It's a simple policy problem. When we keep more of our wealth here, our people will stay here. So for example, when we raise the severance tax on coal and natural gas, when we shift our tax burden away from small businesses towards the out-of-state corporations that are undercutting them, what we create is more resources for people here to pay for things like capitalizing 3,000 small businesses a year, right? That's how we make West Virginia a great place to start new businesses or to come home and start a business. It's how we afford our Take Me Home debt forgiveness plan, which offers student debt forgiveness and even healthcare debt forgiveness for people who come back or who stay in West Virginia involved in some form of public service or public good. It's how we fund better schools and broadband. It's how we fund Mountaineer Service Corps, this infrastructure jobs program to rebuild our water and our roads, that when we make West Virginia the best place in the country to live and work and start a business and raise a family, our kids will stay. Our old friends will come home. We can have a state where our people get the basics that they deserve. And I think there's a real opportunity here. It's not just about West Virginia. A lot of the inequality and desperation that we see in West Virginia is actually happening all over the country. And West Virginia has a real opportunity to lead the way, to be the first state to rig its tax structure and its economy to favor small businesses and union shops and farmers and artists and entrepreneurs instead of dumping all of our resources into chasing Amazon and Walmart.
So we've asked about what we see as some of the major issues facing our state. Aside from these three, give us your quick take on what you see as the other three top largest problems facing West Virginia and your nutshell plan for dealing with them.
So we haven't yet talked about healthcare. Let's talk about healthcare. So our healthcare system is, it's not broken. People say the healthcare system is broken. It's not broken. It's working exactly how it's supposed to work for the giant insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies. It is working perfectly for those shareholders. We have to take that industry and those industries and the power over them away from a handful of shareholders that don't live in West Virginia. The way we do that is by competing with things like a public option and a pharmacy benefits manager and an insurance commissioner. We're the only campaign that has a real plan for reducing healthcare costs at the state level and increasing access to healthcare at the state level. Another problem we see all over West Virginia that we haven't quite talked about yet is substance use disorder and our overdose crisis. Our plan to tackle the substance use disorder and overdose crisis in West Virginia was written by the people who know the most about it, not pharmaceutical companies, not the people who are going to profit off of it, but by people in recovery, by first responders, by doctors and nurses. And what you see is an ambitious but winnable solution to this problem, stealing from the best ideas that West Virginians are already making happen around their communities, from harm reduction to jobs programs to the treatment of co-occurring disorders in every county. We can have a state that has a real response, but we have to take the power of that decision away from the pharmaceutical companies who are getting rich off of the problem. One last thing I'll mention is full cannabis legalization. It's not the answer to all of our problems, but we're proud to be the only campaign in the Democratic or Republican Party that supports full cannabis legalization, not just to help veterans and cancer patients get the medicine they need, not just to help make it so that we aren't criminalizing people for treating themselves or criminalizing people for growing a plant, but also as an economic driver, not just for the revenue it will bring, but to put small business owners and farmers back to work growing and selling cannabis. So those are some of the ways that we distinguish our campaign for others. Go to the website. If you look at our plans, if you like what you see, share them. If you don't like what you see, get in touch with me directly and tell us how to make them better. That's how these plans were built.
We are often our own harshest critics. So this is a two-parter.
Okay.
Do you feel is your worst quality and what is your best quality, in your opinion?
That's a great question. By definition, someone who has never run for office before, running for governor, my worst quality is ego, vanity, whatever you want to call it. You have to have, or most people who do this have some measure of vanity, arrogance, ego, and I'm no exception, right? Believing that I can do this, even as part of a movement like we're building, is an act of ego. I think my best quality is that at the end of the day, I really don't think I have all the answers. At the end of the day, I really don't think that I'm the smartest person in the room. And I think our campaign proves that over and over and over again, when we ratified these plans, one of the reasons why I'm so proud of them is that I didn't write them. That in fact, when we held a convention and our county teams and constituency teams all gathered together to ratify the plan, I didn't even get a vote because I trust that the people who know the problems and the solutions the best are the people who are experiencing those problems and are imagining those solutions. What a great question. No one has ever asked me that.
Good to hear. So these are getting to know you questions, not you, the candidate, you, the person.
Okay.
So what is your favorite thing or place in our state? And don't say the people, they're not a thing or a place. And we all know, we all love West Virginians, so something else.
Oh, man. What a great question. So many. Right now, the thing I'm enjoying most is the train tracks near my house. That my son and I go on these little adventures at 11 a.m. every morning, just sort of going around the woods and the block and the sort of seeing where the train tracks take us. We're being very safe and careful, of course, but that I think what I like about it is that kind of thing, being able to get close to nature or close to industry, is something that you can do almost anywhere in West Virginia and that you can't do in a big city. So right now, that's the thing that comes to mind.
Okay, and what are your personal core values?
This is one of the things that we, all of us 94 candidates, sign a pledge. And there's all kinds of parts of that pledge, but there's one piece of the pledge that is something that is the thing that just makes my blood boil when I see people do it. We say, never punch down. That is the thing that drives me most crazy. The thing that makes me most angry is when people blame the people who are hurting for their own pain. And we have a society that does this all the time, that tries to blame people with substance use disorder for their disease, that tries to blame working people for the fact that they aren't getting paid enough, that tries to blame people of color or people of different religions for being ostracized. That what our campaign believes is that the answer to our problems are the people who are bearing the greatest burdens. Those aren't the problems, those are the answers to our problems. And I think that is probably the value that I hold and our family holds most closely. You guys know this, I think, but other folks may not. My wife is a public defender. So every day she takes her top 10 in the country law degree that could be making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and instead walks into a courtroom, lines up next to the person in that courtroom who has nobody else standing next to them, someone who has been charged with a violent crime and who can't afford their own attorney. And that's the side she chooses every single day, even though and because that system is rigged against her and against her client. And that inspires me. I think it speaks to this idea that the core value that drives us as a family is wanting to be on the side of the people who are getting beat up the most, not the people who are wagging their fingers.
We probably touched on this at some point in the interview, but what would you say you as an individual, not candidate, are most passionate about?
I love watching people do things they didn't think they could do. That in some other parallel universe, my whole job right now would just be working with other candidates. That's my favorite part of this, is watching these candidates who are the people who are normally kept out of the political process. You know, our candidates are disproportionately women, disproportionately people of color, disproportionately working class. 15 of the 94 of us were educators who got mobilized by the strike movement. That work one-on-one, and even in my private life, getting to watch friends or family try things or do things that they never thought they could do. That's the thing that gets me going in the morning.
So what do you enjoy doing in your off time? Not that you have a lot of it right now.
Cooking. The thing I most enjoy is cooking. I like it because the way it brings people together, but it's also a creative pursuit. It's a way to be in your thoughts. It's a way to build something. It's a way to serve people. And that's the thing I missed most being on the road. Obviously, people cooked wonderful meals for me. I got to eat a lot of very good food. But one gift about being at home and being in a family that can afford to go to the grocery store is that we're cooking a lot, and I'm getting a chance to be back in the kitchen cooking for me and Sarah and Jackson, and that's my favorite hobby.
And last one, what do you think is most unique about you, again, as a person, not a candidate? Mine is that I can say all 55 states or all 55 counties.
You are the only person that can say all 55 states.
No,
you know the next 5 states.
Together.
Yeah, you're looking just like a silly thing or a,
yeah.
I'm pretty boring. I mean, I work, I hang out with my family, I cook. There's not a lot else going on here. Shoot. I should be ready for this question. Most unique. This isn't terribly unique, but it's not something I talk about publicly a lot. It's a hobby, a thing I'm deeply interested in is basketball. I'm a huge fan of the NBA, professional basketball. I almost never get to watch it, but I read about it all the time. I love the statistics and the stats and comparing players from different eras. It's like the one place in my life I get to just go geek out and follow other people doing something incredible that I can't do.
Well, with that, we'd like to give you a few minutes to tell us and the voters anything that you think we need to know, maybe that we've missed in this interview, including how to get more information on your campaign or get involved, get in touch with you, donate, etc.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I think what people are looking for right now is a different kind of government and a different kind of campaign. I want to go through a couple of the ways in which our campaign is fundamentally different from every other campaign on either side of the aisle. We're the only campaign in this race that doesn't take corporate PAC money. We're the only campaign in this race that doesn't take money from pharmaceutical companies or out-of-state land holding companies or big energy companies. We want to be accountable only to the people of this state. We're the only campaign that has a unionized staff, the only campaign in West Virginia history with a unionized staff. We broke the record for most donations ever in a governor's race, and we did it 6 months before the election was over. We're still growing that record today. We've raised more individual donations than all of our opponents combined and held more town halls than all of our opponents combined. If you're looking for a campaign that isn't the same old thing, you will find it. You'll find it on our website, but you'll also find it just talking to our people. Maybe it's a neighborhood captain who got in touch with you, or one of the other 93 of us who are running for office. And I'll say, most of us are Democrats. I'm a Democrat. We also have Republicans and Mountain Party people and libertarians, because we don't think that one party is the answer to all of our problems any more than one politician is the answer to all of our problems. That it's going to take all of us. With that, it also means it's going to take you. So if you're watching this, I'm going to give you the ways to contact me directly. Of course, you can go to our website, wvcan'twait.com. You can see our plan for the coronavirus. You can see our new deal for West Virginia about how we build a Homestead Act and a Mountaineer Service Corps and broadband as a public utility and full cannabis legalization and everything else we talked about. You can see all those plans, take a look at them, share them, make them better. But you can also just call me directly. My cell phone number is 304-610-6512. I'm going to give it again. It's 304-610-6512. That comes to this phone. You can also email me at steven@wvcan'twait.com. I promise you we won't agree on everything, but there is not a campaign in West Virginia right now or in recent memory that is more accessible to the people of this state. And that's because we have to be. The only way for us to win, I'm not a billionaire or a millionaire. I can't write myself a giant check. We don't take money from out-of-state corporations. We can't build our campaign that way. The only shot we have of winning is to listen to and respond and be led by the people of the state. So I hope you will lead me and help lead our state to a very different kind of government. June 9th is the election. I hope to earn your vote. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us this afternoon, Stephen. We appreciate you taking the time to talk to the voters and to us. And folks, remember, wash those hands.
With that, we'd like to let you know, again, if you are interested in getting an interview with the MOV Public Forum, you can reach out to us either through our Facebook page, MOV Public Forum, or at email. That's movpublicforum@gmail.com. We're also on Twitter, and we have a YouTube channel and a website in the works. That's movpublicforum.org. Thanks so much.